A very good evening to you, and we are here at the Racecourse Grounds in Colombo on the eve of the Asian Rugby Sevens 2019, which is scheduled to take place over the weekend, the third leg, and it is going to be a very exciting affair between the best sevens teams in Asia. But before that, we have a very distinguished gentleman with us here today at the Racecourse Grounds, who is going to have a chat with us. A prominent rugby personality in the 50s, 60s, going on into the 70s. And we warmly welcome today Mr. Stanely Unamboowa. A very good evening to you, sir.
Good evening again.
Well, thank you first and foremost for joining us, Mr. Unamboowa. And it's a pleasure to have you with us today on Sri Lanka Rugby. This is, of course, a few sessions going by interviewing a few of the past players who have been involved with the game of rugby in Sri Lanka. Way back in 1951, 49 to 51, if I'm correct, you were involved a lot with rugby at Royal College in Colombo. Can you just give us some highlights, some moments you remember of that distinguished career at Royal?
Well, the only thing is, only thing I remember is that or not remember, but I can't think of a lot of players who played with me. You see, there were only 3 matches going on then, three schools playing rugby. One was Trinity, one was Zahira, which didn't play much rugby, and Royal. 2 schools played rugby, and so it was very few matches. It's only Royal Trinity 2 matches and 1 match against Zahira or something like that. Beyond that, there was no real rugby as such at that time of the, during our time. I played, as I said, in 49 to 51 school rugby, and then I played club rugby till 1965, club and Sri Lanka Rugby till 1965.
So during that era, 1949 to 51, was there club rugby happening? Because there were only 3 schools which were playing, as you say, school rugby. But how was the status of club rugby then?
Well, there was CRNFC, Havelocks, and CHNFC. Those were the main rugby clubs.
So those 3 clubs also would have been having players from those 3 schools, I presume.
Well, the CHNFC was totally white people, Europeans, Colombo, mercantile guys and all that sort of thing. CRNFC and Havelocks were all Sri Lankans.
So you went to, after finishing at Royal, you moved up country, you were in the planting industry and so on, and you were involved in rugby with a lot of up country teams. Anything you could tell us about rugby then in the up country?
Well, one of the things I remember is that I played for all the up-country rugby clubs. There were 5 clubs, and I happened to be transferred from estate to estate while planting. I was planting for 17 years, and with these transfers, you played for a different club every time you transfer to a different district. That's something that I remember.
Any of the names? You remember any of those club names at all? Even 1 or 2, if it comes to your memory? Yes.
The sports club, that's what I first played for. Dimbula Athletics Club, Dikoya Club, KV Club, and Candy, KV, Dimbula, Dikoya, and Uber. Uber was Badula.
So when it comes to up-country rugby, then I think it would have been really competitive, I presume, with a lot of star players, Sri Lankans as well as foreigners involved in the game. It would have been a very competitive affair there in the plantations.
Competitive means most of the players at that time, the up-country clubs was white fellows, foreigners, because there were a lot of European planters at that time, and they sort of monopolized the rugby sides and clubs and stuff like that till we came into our own at a later stage, and they started moving out. But till then it was mix of Sri Lankans, very few Sri Lankans actually. Up country I'm talking about up country sides. Low country sides like Havelocks, CRNFC, they were all Sri Lankan. But the up country sides were generally, I would say, 75%, 70%, my time, 70 to 75% whites.
From 1958 to 65, I presume you were part of the Sri Lankan side, probably in and out, stuff like that. But you had probably a career of 7 years involved with Sri Lankan rugby. Any memories you could give us of that stint?
Can't really think of anything that is of importance, because at that time we played a couple of tournaments in India. I remember going to Madras, and there was this incident where a naked woman ran onto the field. Apart from that, I can't really think of anything that is especially anything that comes to my mind as something that's worth talking about.
Certainly those things. But I presume rugby then, playing Mr. Unamboowa with the foreigners, especially as you say the whites, etc. Sri Lankan players would have, I think, learned a lot, gained a lot, and toughened themselves playing with the foreigners.
Not really. I don't think we were just as good as they were, except that they were much bigger than us. So they had the advantage of weight. But apart from that, I think we had very good, particularly the three quarters, were certainly much superior to most of the Europeans. Those guys were basically forwards. So that's as far as I can do now. I remember first playing for Kandy. It was entirely, the line was entirely Sri Lankan. The fullback was Sri Lankan. The two wing forwards were Sri Lankan. Then there were 6 Europeans. That was in Kandy. But in other areas like Dimbula and Dikoya, it was majority whites. White. Not that there was any problem, playing with them, but they were the majority.
After your playing career was over, you came back to Colombo. Were you involved in any way in rugby at any stint at all, as coaching or administration level or management level or refereeing or anything like that, or you gave up rugby totally?
When I say gave up rugby totally, I was a committee member of the CRNFC Rugby, whatever it is, committee that they had. Beyond that, I didn't get really, just came and watched matches, that's about it.
Do you still continue to watch matches at venues?
Very rarely. I don't watch much rugby now, because it's a question of, at my age, having to go to the place and, go early, because matches start at about 4 o'clock or something like that, and that's the time I like to rest at home and relax and generally hang around, go for a walk or something like that. But I don't watch much rugby now.
The Rugby World Cup happening these days on TV. Probably you must be following a couple of those games.
Yes, watched a couple of games. Yesterday and today there are no games, but I watched a couple of the internationals that what's happening in Japan.
Yes, so that is Mr. Stanely Unamboowa, who has joined us for this brief chat here on this Friday evening, and we hope that he probably will find some time to visit us over the weekend here at the Asian Rugby Sevens happening at the Racecourse grounds. A big thank you very much, Mr. Stanely Unamboowa. Thank you for your time, your precious time with this chatting with us, and just going down memory lane back to the 1950s, 60s and 70s. On behalf of Sri Lankan Rugby, a very big thank you to you.
Thank you for the experience. It was quite an interesting conversation that we had, going back to old times. Thank you.